Hey guys, what's up? Zero here, and today we're going to be going over the patch notes for 8.13. First up, we have that Aatrox will be added to the patch. I'm not going to go too much in depth to that, just because it's going to be kind of hard to gauge how effective he is going to be on the meta, but a lot of people on the PvE are saying he feels like a second Riven, and I am all for any champion that feels like Riven. I expect him to be pretty good. From what I can tell, he has percent life damage, which is going to be good into tanks. He's kind of a bruiser, which is decent into assassins, which are the two metas I'm kind of worried about the game shifting towards. So I think as long as his numbers are okay, he's going to be pretty decent no matter what. Next up, we have the Aurelia nerfs. Most of these are aimed at slowing her burst down and turning her into a more DPS over time style champion instead of burst. They don't like that she's playing as a bruiser. They don't like that she can burst people super hard. So they're taking some of the burst off her passive. They're taking a decent chunk of burst off her W. And then just because overall, even without the burst, they're pretty sure she's still going to be too strong because she's just god tier right now. They're taking a second off both the E and the R's mark duration. The E one, I don't expect it to change almost anything at all. I think if you're able to hit it, you're still going to get your trades no matter what. The R, on the other hand, if you're landing it on multiple people or whole team, might actually prevent one of the jumps. Possibly if somebody can kind of start to get away from you, but I don't think that's going to be too huge. The big thing is going to be the W nerf, and then the passive nerf. You'll definitely feel it a little bit for sure. Okay, next up we have Kindred. It's kind of a big change on her W, so she's getting something similar back to what she had before, where every so often her next auto attack will heal. This time it has a little bit different mechanic on it though, where it's going to drain the life instead of just straight healing. So it'll deal damage and heal her both. And that's going to be based on how low her health is. So I'm kind of interested to see if this inspires a Olaf style jungle out of Kindred players. Like you go into the jungle, you get as low as you possibly can to do the most damage physically possible. It kind of depends on how quickly this will stack and go off. I expect it to actually probably be on the exact same time or static shift though. The other thing she's getting is, they're calling it a bug fix, but in general it's a pretty big buff, is that Wolf's attacks when you have W active are actually going to scale with attack speed now, which is a pretty big deal, I think. Not a huge amount of your damage will come from that, but it will definitely add up, especially on squishies. Alright, the next one we have here is Lucian. The first thing they're doing is taking a little bit of his scaling AD off. This ends up being roughly 8 AD in the late game, which is about 280 gold worth of stats. It's not a huge amount. It's something though. I mean, 300 gold is a kill, so it's almost a kill worth of gold when you're at level 18 of power that's being taken away. I think the bigger thing here is the nerf to his R. They're taking half of the bonus damage to minions away, which is a really big nerf, but at the same time, I'm not surprised. Riot's been constantly rooting out and just gutting anything that has to do with wave clear in the game at all, because they don't want wave clear to exist anymore, more or less. They feel like it takes value away from having skill in the lane phase if you can just blow up the whole wave. So this is just another ability. Talia recently got hit super hard on all of her abilities for wave clear, and now it's Lucian's turn. So that's mostly where that's coming from. I do expect him, even after these changes, to still be one of the better ADCs for sure. So these Pyke changes are actually pretty interesting. They're taking away a little bit of his health. They're giving him some armor and magic resist to make him a little squishier yet, I guess, technically. But the big thing they're doing here is they're taking away some of the base damages from his E and his R, and then they're giving him more scaling. So what they're trying to do is discourage people that are currently building like a really tanky Pyke. I've seen a lot of people going like Duskblade GA and then just all tank items to try to be as tanky as possible. People take Aftershock on him. It's pretty obnoxious how tanky he can get for a character that can't actually build health at all. So what this is going to do is he's actually going to have even more damage than he has now if you build damage, and he's going to be weaker because of the lack of base damages if you continue to build tank. So what I actually expect this to do is pretty much in general cause him to be stronger than he is right now in the mid game, but a little bit weaker in the late game. Gragas is next, and they're giving his W a pretty big buff. It's going to have a considerably shorter cooldown early game, from 8 seconds down to 5. Plus, it gets like a little 50 range bonus on it when you use it. So this does two things. One, it makes it easier to hit the W without necessarily always having to body slam for it, his E. And the second thing it does is the cooldown's now short enough in the early game. If you get into like a scrap in the jungle, like a 2v2, or you're even just brawling with the other jungler, you probably are going to be able to get 2 Ws off, as long as they're also kind of tanky or like a bruiser, nothing that can just blow you up super quick. Assassins are still going to be able to kill you before that 5-second window, but anything that is slower to do so, you're going to potentially see 2. J4's next on here. I feel like his changes are pretty irrelevant. They're minimum damage on his passive, 2 seconds off his E, but not enough to be able to use it multiple times. They're just trying to give him small buffs because it's so easy for Jarvan to come back into the meta. They don't want to overbuff him and have him be a god. But in general, I guess the 20 damage on his E is probably the biggest buff, the rank 1, because now it brings that to your first gank, but I wouldn't expect anything crazy off this. Next up, we have Jinx here. The first change she's getting is 10% crit damage on her Q, which I actually expect to be pretty big. People kind of underestimate this in general, and when Yasuo just recently got a crit damage buff to his Q, it ended up boosting his win rate considerably. And this isn't just a single ability that's receiving this. It's when she has the rockets toggled on, it's going to be all of her auto attacks. So late game Jinx is going to be quite a bit stronger than she is now. And what's really scary about these changes is that they're buffing the attack damage scaling on her W by 20% also, which means that early and mid-game Jinx is also going to be scarier. So literally the entire game, Jinx is going to be scarier than she is now, because the W buff helps her early and mid quite a bit. The Q buff helps her really late. So her whole game just got better. I expect to see a lot more Jinx around for sure. Maybe this can help break up some of this 5v5 bruiser meta shenanigans we got going on right now. Next up, we got Calista here. She's getting a pretty small, between like 1.25 and 5% attack damage increase on her Rens. In general, I don't really expect this to do a ton. Callista's already in a pretty good spot as long as you're duo with the support. So buffs to that is always going to be pretty strong, but for complete solo queue play, I don't think it's going to change virtually anything at all. So next on their list is Kassadin. First change is they're making Netherblade cost 1 mana. It's purely so that you can use it to stack tier now. It has to be able to cost mana for tier to be able to stack. So that's just a little quality of life change. So Kassadin's W, E, and R are all getting 10% more ability power scaling. I think this is going to be pretty good for Kassadin. Right now, there's a lot of like bruisers and tanks being played. So it's kind of hard for Kassadin to be good when there's no mages around, because that's where he really excels because of his Q. I expect these buffs to be pretty good if we do shift back into a mage meta at all, but in the current state of the meta, I don't think it's going to do much for him. Next is Orianna with a buff to her W cooldown timer. It's 2 seconds off. It's a pretty good thing. It's going to give her a little bit more damage. A little while back, they did a pass over shields and nerf them across the board as a whole. So this is kind of just trying to give her back a little bit of power, but not on her shields. So from the last couple of changes total, Orianna's going to have a little bit less shielding power and a little bit more damage, especially in team fights. Potentially could let you eke out a second W that you maybe wouldn't have got after your 2-3 items and have some cooldown reduction. Not bad. These next changes I'm pretty excited about. We got Riven on here, and they're giving her 1.5 health regen, which is awesome. This was actually what they took away a while back to pretty much remove Riven from the top lane. I know there's a lot of Riven mains out there. They're going to say she's not dead, but she doesn't see very much play anymore because they took that away. So giving it back, I think, is actually basically just going to bring her back, especially since we're already in a bruiser meta. And she's a bruiser, so it fits perfectly. I'm pretty excited to see this. It should definitely help increase Riven play. The 10 seconds off her ult isn't huge. I guess it'll shorten your kill pressure windows a tiny bit. More of quality of life than anything, I think, early, just to make it a nice even 2 minutes instead of an awkward 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Okay, so we also have Tristana here with some pretty seriously big buffs to her E's attack damage scaling. Basically, late game, she's getting almost 50% more attack damage scaling on her E, which is a massive amount of scaling. I think the idea here is they want Tristana to be the end game, late game ADC. That if it reaches late game and she's on all items, she can just destroy things. Because giving her another 50% scaling on her E is going to make her blow up tanks, blow up towers, and it's going to be absolutely disgusting. The scaling kicks on about 20% or so in the mid game, almost 30%. So I expect it to help her mid game out a little bit. Her late game is going to be disgustingly massive if she gets there. Early game's not going to change much, so we'll kind of have to see, but this is definitely the bring back ADCs patch. Tryndamere is getting a couple seconds off his E late game. I really don't think this does a whole lot of anything. Maybe it saves him an auto attack to get his E back, but it's not going to change much. Twitch is the next ADC being buffed this patch. He's getting an additional like 60% scaling on his E from the on use, which is a lot. So again, late game buffs. Early game it's not going to be that much because as far as I know, Twitch still isn't really building too much attack damage super early. He might build a BF sword and then like a full hurricane and then sit on the BF for a while. I know Blade of the Rune King Hurricane's pretty popular also. So really this is aimed at making sure that his late game, like open up, hit everybody with Hurricane and ult, push E combo really just kills everybody. So the next one on the list is Camille. They're taking like 15 damage off her early hook shot. They're taking quite a bit. They're taking 55 off her late game for the base damage. So this will hurt her early ganks a little bit, and then late game it'll kind of ensure you have to build some damage. I don't think there's too much problem with Camille building straight tank. And I think this change is more aimed at jungle Camille than lane. So Mundo, they're taking 20 attack damage off his late game E. I think that's a good thing. Mundo can build literally straight tank right now and just be a giant beef machine and still do a lot of damage. Taking some of his attack damage away is definitely a good thing. He's probably a little oppressive in the lower elos. Even in higher elo, he sees more play than he should right now. So the next two changes here, Master Yi and Nunu, are both changes aimed at stopping the boosting strat, or like the gold funneling strat, whatever you want to call it, where you essentially combine mid lane and jungle to just make one really, really powerful champion, and then hopefully that guy carries the game. So the first one you see a lot of is like Tarik and Master Yi. So what they're doing to Master Yi is they're taking the bonus damage to minions off his Q to slow down his farming. So it's specifically aimed at not hurting his damage against champions all, but slowing down his farming. However, being that he's a late game carry, anything that slows down his farming is going to hurt him. So I expect this to actually hurt Yi very, very badly, and hopefully disrupt the funneling strat with him. The other one is Nunu and Karthus, where Nunu's technically the mid laner, Karthus is the jungle, and you just funnel all of the gold of the jungle and mid lane into the Karthus, and then Karthus himself is pretty strong, so with that kind of a lead, he just destroys everybody in the game. The main nerf to him is his W is going to give way, way, way less ability power. This doesn't necessarily stop him from doing the like duo jungle thing, but the loss of ability power that he's not able to give Karthus before he ults and stuff now is pretty seriously big. So I'm hoping this one stops that, but I'm a little less convinced that this one will work than the Yi one will. So now we have a couple of Ornn nerfs. The first one is he's losing 2 health per 5, which is absolutely massive. We were talking about Riven earlier gaining 1.5, which is really, really big. Well, 2 is more than 1.5, so it's going to be a huge nerf. The other thing that I think is really relevant about this is that Ornn is a champion that's literally built to not leave lane. Like his passive lets him craft in the lane, so your goal is to never leave. Losing 2 health per 5 is going to hurt really bad. Like if you take a bad trade or you get poked on or anything, there's a good chance you're going to have to back a considerable amount more as Ornn now. And speaking of bad trades, they're nerfing the width and the length of his flamethrower. So now the cone itself is smaller. Like if they take a quick trade on you or from a ranged like Jace auto attack with the gun or something, the ability to trade back is going to be a lot worse now. Alright, then we have some singed nerfs here. The percent health one's pretty self-explanatory. It just kind of hurts him and gets tanks early. The interesting one is the nerfs to his R. He loses 5 all stats, which is a noticeable amount. And then the big one actually is that Time Warp Tonic will not work with his R anymore. For those of you that use that now, 5% extra run speed on your ult is a lot. That's a lot of run speed. Like back before 1.5 was a quint when we had the old rune system. So 3 quints was 4.5. So you literally got more than 3 quints of value for a like lesser talent in inspiration. That's absolutely insane. So I'm kind of glad they're fixing that one, but it is gonna hurt. We got some Tarik nerfs as well. This kind of goes back to the Yi Tarik boosting strat a little bit. Most of these are more aimed at Tarik being worse from behind now, so he needs more armor to be able to scale his damage up to what it was before. The base damages are going to be lower, and his ult cooldown is reasonably longer, 20 seconds at every single rank. That's quite a bit of time, so those are some pretty hefty nerfs actually. Vlad nerf on here, I'm actually pretty happy to see this one. I'm not ashamed to play Vlad, but he is in a ridiculously strong spot right now, and the fact that he can be played as pretty much an assassin for how much damage he does is just not what the champion was made to do at all. He's supposed to be like a drain tank that like wears you out and slurps you down and stuff, not this person that just blows you up and one-shots you. So him losing 20% off his E, I'm not surprised. And we have Zoe nerfs on here. She's losing 10% of the ability power scaling off the damage side of her W, and then a full second of time off the run speed. Riot's kind of been slowly making passes at lowering mobility as a whole a little bit, because it's kind of been creeping up and up and up and getting more and more out of control at how mobile some champions are. So taking a second off that's mostly a shot at that. The 10% in terms of the ability power scaling is most likely that Riot does not like that leveling W second right now is technically best, and they really want E leveled second. So it's probably to try to force you into that, which it might. Ginsu's getting a big nerf here, losing a full 1.5% both off the attack damage and ability power. This is big, but I think the point is that there are way too many champions right now building this item that should not be building this item. So hopefully this will get it back onto only the champions that should build it and not just everybody. But at the same time, hopefully it doesn't gut those champions, because that would be unfortunate as well. Domination's also being buffed just straight up because they feel it's weaker than sorcery, which I'd have to agree with in most cases. So you're just getting a little bit more attack damage or ability power. Hail of Blades is being buffed because literally no one uses it right now. It's pretty trash. So now it's going to trigger faster, and you have a little bit more time to use it. I think the best person this is going to be used on is probably going to be Kindred, because she wants to proc that 3-hit passive right away on a gank. So if we see Hail of Blades popping up anywhere, I expect it to be on Kindred first, and then maybe spread to some other things, but I still don't think this is enough to make it good enough to use. Unsealed Spellbook getting some buffs. It takes less unique summoner spells to hit the CD cap, which is really good. I do think that the people that want to use Spellbook, this is just a straight buff, and I think that's great. I don't know entirely that this is going to force a lot of other people that don't want to use it though, which is fine. I don't want 5 people having Spellbook, but it's such a niche spell that I feel like it's either going to be underpowered or overpowered most of the time. And at this point, I think I'd rather just see it reworked to something else completely. Our next couple of changes are aimed at slowing down the amount of snowball and like one-sidedness in a game. So right now the game feels a lot like one team gets lead and then they just run it down mid and they end the game and that's it. So what they're doing is taking roughly 4 seconds off the death timers early. Hopefully you can get back to lane and stop your tower from getting broken right away on your first death. It's kind of the goal here. The other thing they're doing in terms of that is actually lowering the outer turret gold. So even if they do kill you one time, take your tower, it's worth a little bit less gold. All the other people on the team only get 50 gold instead of 100. So that ends up being 200 gold less for the team. It's reasonable. The bounty change here is pretty big actually. So bounties are actually going to start at 2 for 150 gold, which is a big deal. If somebody only has 2 kills, they're already worth a bounty, so they become worth 450 gold, which is awesome. I like that. Then they're upping the amount for the 3 to 6 and the 6+. So what they want is there to be more rubber banding in the game. Like if one team gets a lead and they screw up or the other team makes a good play on them, they want that other team to be able to come back. They don't want a lead early to end the game every game, which it does feel a little bit like that right now. So I'm pretty happy with honestly all these changes. I think they're going to be good, and I think they're going to make for a lot more close matches, which is a good thing. We're giving a minor buff to Cinderhulk here. It's going to be able to last hit small monsters, which is actually pretty big. The fact that it, especially a Raptor camp, can save you like 5 auto attacks is pretty big, and I think this will slowly shift tanks back into the meta in the jungle a little bit. There's got to be some other changes I think that happen first for you to want to fully play them there, but I think that's the direction we're going, and I expect this to help them out for sure. Things like Sejuani probably coming back. Alright guys, well that about does it for all the big changes. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like the insight, if you like going over the patch notes with me or not. What are your thoughts on the patches? Do you think these are going to be able to bring ADCs back into the meta, or do you think we're stuck in this 5v5 bruiser for another 3 weeks? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next time.